Well, as Kate was alluding to, a controversial bill that overrides parts of the Brexit withdrawal agreement and breaks international law has just been published. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has a copy of it. And Sam, this is the document that there was much discussion of yesterday in the House of Commons, with Brandon Lewis talking about it being a specific and limited breaking of the rules.
Yes, here it is, published in the last half an hour or so, the Internal Market Bill for the United Kingdom, it's called. And even by the scale of the last turbulent few years, it's pretty much up there amongst the most controversial things that any government has done in recent years. Why? Well, it's a wide-ranging bill that seeks essentially to redistribute powers after we leave the European Union in all sorts of different places, some in the Westminster government, some in the Scottish, Wales and Northern Ireland government. But the thing that has exercised many people, including triggering a Tory revolt led by Theresa May, is the plan to unwind, to override part of the withdrawal agreement, the agreement struck between the UK and the EU at the end of last year in order to facilitate the first part of Brexit. Now, everyone was waiting to see whether the legislation did what the briefing said on the tin, and indeed it does. Here, Clause 45 makes absolutely clear that all the provisions in this bill, it says, must be introduced notwithstanding any relevant international or domestic law. In other words, it doesn't matter what other international or domestic laws, like the withdrawal treaty, said. What happens in this piece of legislation must be regarded first and most important by the courts. A very big moment for Parliament to consciously choose to override a piece of domestic law. So the criticism will increase, I suspect. But it's worth also pointing out what this bill doesn't do, because that's going to feature in the debate in the next couple of years. It effectively gives ministers the power to decide themselves, rather than in agreement with Europe, what's going to happen on checks on goods from the GB mainland, Great Britain, to Northern Ireland, and on state aid. So it gives ministers the powers, but it doesn't actually say what's going to happen. And there's a brewing row amongst Brexiteers who think that this bill, despite the controversy, doesn't go far enough, because it only gives the powers, doesn't promise to do what the Brexiteers actually want. That's going to come in secondary regulations published later this year. So for some, this bill goes far too far. But for others, because it's only the powers and not the detail of what the British government's going to do next, it doesn't go far enough.
Sam, thanks very much. And as Sam was talking, we have had a tweet from the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. As she says, she's very concerned about announcements from the British government on its intentions to breach the withdrawal agreement. This would break international law and undermines trust. Pact sunt servanda, which is the foundation of prosperous future relations.